Let's speak with Paul Embery, trade unionist, author of Despise Why the Modern Left Loathes the Working Class. Always good to have you on, Paul. I know you caught most of that speech. Your first assessment, if you could. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Good to be with you. I should say you can't actually move for union flags in the conference centre in Liverpool at the moment, and St George's flags, there's thousands. If you're a Liverpool flag manufacturer, trust me, you can retire tomorrow.
Yeah.
You've obviously made a lot of money.
I'm sure that was just a sheer accident that so many flags appeared at this time in our current epoch.
Without any doubt at all. I've heard lots of leaders' speeches in party conferences, not just Labour, but obviously other leaders as well. And the reality is that electorally, they don't matter a jot.
Yeah.
Very few of them actually have a lasting impact on the polls or on public perception of the leader. I think the only one that I can really remember making a real impact was Neil Kinnock when he took on the militant tendency in '85 in that barnstorming speech in Bournemouth, I think it was.
It's an absolute beauty, wasn't it? There were people walking out of it, the Eric Heffers of this world and the like, very unhappy.
And the Derek Hattons shouting criticism and so on. But that was a boil that needed lancing, and the public realised that, and Kinnock was right to do it. I think this speech was okay. I think it was pretty much what we expected. I like the commitment to abandon the 50% of young people going to university. I think that was a dreadful policy that was brought in by Tony Blair. I think it has resulted in the demeaning in the eyes of many of our upper echelons of manual work, of manual labour, of apprenticeships, and resulted actually in ultimately a reliance on imported labour because we were so intent on getting young kids through university. So I think it was okay. But look, Labour has got to do three things if it is to stand any chance of winning the next election. It's got to get growth in the economy. If it doesn't do that and do that fairly soon, then frankly, it could kiss goodbye to any chance of winning again. It has got to get the small boats crisis resolved quickly and get immigration numbers down, and it's got to reduce NHS waiting lists. Unless it does all of those three things in short order, then frankly, everything that's going on today, all of the whoops and the cheers and the applause, will end up meaning nothing, frankly.
There was, to me, Paul, a sense, and I suppose this is about the kind of changing era we live in. I think the appetite for how we want to see our politicians has changed, the kind of speeches we want to hear them give. There is very much, you know, we've got used to senior politicians of all parties sort of reading from pre-prepared press releases written by a spad and, you know, with little phrases and catchy slogans in there. I sense there was still a bit of that national renewal, smash the gangs, secure the borders. We want detail, don't we? I know you can't go into every detail at a party conference, but there was that sort of platitude crime taking place, it seems.
Yeah, and we want delivery. That's the key thing.
Yeah.
We want delivery because I think the reality is, Ian, that many people out there in the country feel that we are an undeveloping country. I mean, yes, Labour was elected last year on a landslide, but it was a Loveless landslide. People were so angry with the Tories that, frankly, they would have voted for any alternative. So it's not as if Labour was kind of sent to Downing Street and into Westminster to form a government with a barrel load of kind of love and affection behind them. So they always had to do things quickly. And the problem is, you know, we've been in power now for 15 months or whatever it is, and people are not seeing the delivery. They're not seeing the delivery in terms of immigration, in terms of the small boats, in terms of growth. Without growth in the economy, you know, the reality is people are going to feel that their living standards have crashed over recent years, that their disposable income has gone down, that they've had to deal with two financial crises, the global financial crisis in 2008, the cost of living crisis more recently. You need to get money into people's pockets. You need to make them feel that, you know, their living standards have improved. And you need to make sure that you're delivering on all of the things that are important for the people in this country in terms of the NHS, in terms of ending the housing crisis, in terms of ending the small boats crisis. Delivery is the key thing. Without any of that, then everything that's been said at the rostrum today and elsewhere will just turn to dust.
100%. There was about maybe 2 references to the Conservatives, which is interesting considering they are the official opposition, but 3,500 references to Reform and Nigel Farage. I mean, are the Labour Party kind of playing this a bit too hard now? I mean, that sense that you know, many people might look at this and say, hang on a second, you're sounding more scared and bothered than you are anything else on this. One bit of advice to Starmer might well have been, don't even mention Nigel Farage. But he kind of went there, as Wes Streeting did, as Shabana Mahmood did yesterday, as Rachel Reeves did as well. Farage is living rent-free in these people's heads right now, Paul, and I think the only beneficiary of all of this is Nigel Farage.
Well, I think, though, Ian, the truth is that reality has hit home to many people around here. You know, I think many of them would... It goes against all of their instincts to keep banging on about Nigel Farage. They would like to pretend the guy doesn't exist. But the reality is that Reform has parked its tanks on Labour's lawn. You know, Reform came second in 98 seats in the last general election, 89 of which were won by Labour and 60 of which were in the north of England. So the truth is there is a threat. When you look at the way that Reform is storming the polls at the moment, there is a threat, and it's a threat that needs to be dealt with. So as much as people here would like to pretend that isn't the threat, the reality is in 3 or 4 years we're going to be facing a Reform government with Nigel Farage having the keys to number 10. And you've got to now, from a Labour Party point of view, have the narrative to be able to take that on and challenge Reform. And I think they can be challenged on lots of stuff. You need to have that debate.
Do you think, we had a call, Shirley, in the last hour, who made a very good point, that if you kind of, and I know Starmer is trying to distinguish between, you know, thuggery and the far right and racism and people who have a genuine and honest concern about things like immigration. But if you keep wheeling out the R word every time, you're in fairly dangerous territory, aren't you? This is kind of, you know, people, we talk about hate speech a lot and the perils of politicians going there. Is there a danger that Labour could overplay this a little bit, bearing in mind we do live in fairly troubling times when it comes to people acting on their opinions?
Well, I mean, I've been on the left all my adult life, Ian, and I've marched against the genuine far right.
Yeah.
I've marched against the National Front and the British National Party and people like that, and people who would march through areas with high numbers of minority ethnic people, and they'd be doing the Sieg Heil, and they'd have skinheads and Doc Martens and that kind of thing. You knew who the far right were. The reality is, when you look at the protests that are taking place over recent months, some of those that are taking place outside hotels, undoubtedly some of those noxious far-right elements are involved. Of course they will be. But in my view, the broad mass of people who are marching, for example, as they did in London a couple of weeks or so ago, who are attending the protests at hotels, these are not traditional far-right people. I suspect some of them in the past may have actually been sympathetic to the Labour Party. They're people in working-class communities who have been left behind by globalisation. They've seen massive deindustrialisation, far-reaching demographic change. They've seen, you know, governments of different political stripes which have essentially treated them like dirt and said, actually, you're concerned but nativist and bigoted and you need to embrace cosmopolitan liberalism and all the rest of it. And these people, frankly, have just about had enough. And they're not doing it because they're white supremacists or they believe in you know, anti-Semitism and all of the things that you normally associate with the far right. They're doing it because they feel that they're losing their status in society. They're predominantly white working class people. And unless we can speak to them and assuage their concerns, and we've been rubbish at that in recent years, then we can kiss goodbye to their support forever, I think. Yeah, spot on. Listen, Paul, I know you have to dash. Great to have you on as ever. We will speak again soon. Paul Embery, always a great voice from, you know, a lot of people listen to Paul go, well, he's from the left. Yeah, he is from the left. He's actually a trade unionist. He's a firefighter, for goodness sake. But, of course, it sometimes gets him in trouble because he has very, very, what I would call reasoned and moderate views